The little girl appeared beside him so quietly that Lucien Hart almost didn't notice her. He was sitting alone at a long wooden table in the university library, surrounded by books and unfinished assignments, trying to forget that he had only $12 left in his bank account and was about to lose his apartment. The rain outside poured against the giant windows, and the old library seemed colder than usual. Then a tiny voice broke the silence. "Can I sit with you?" Lucien looked up. A little girl with dark hair and a gray hoodie stood beside him, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying for hours. "Of course," he said. She sat beside him immediately, as though she had been searching for safety. A second later, the library doors burst open. 3 men in black suits entered. They weren't students. They weren't professors. Their eyes moved through the room like hunters searching for prey. The little girl suddenly grabbed Lucien's sleeve. "Please, don't let them find me." A chill ran through him. He looked at her carefully. She was terrified. Lucien had known fear himself. After losing his parents in a car accident at 12, he had spent years in foster homes and orphanages. He knew exactly what it looked like when someone had nowhere to run. Without asking questions, he closed his notebook. "Come with me." The little girl followed him between the bookshelves. The men continued searching. They hid inside a small archive room filled with dusty books and old newspapers. The girl's hands were shaking. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Alessia." "I'm Lucien." She nodded and held her rabbit tighter. Minutes passed. Then footsteps approached the archive room. Someone tried the door. Alessia nearly stopped breathing. Lucien placed himself in front of her. The footsteps moved away. Only then did the little girl begin crying silently. "I'm scared," she whispered. He didn't know who she was or why people were chasing her, but he couldn't leave her alone. "I promise," he said, "nothing will happen to you while I'm here." For some reason, she believed him. An hour later the library finally closed. The men in black seemed to have disappeared. Outside, the rain had stopped. Lucien took the little girl to a small café across the street and bought her a sandwich and hot chocolate with his last few dollars. She ate slowly. Then she looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" The question surprised him. Nobody had ever asked him that. He smiled sadly. "Because someone should." For a moment she simply stared at him. Then she smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it somehow made the entire evening feel warmer. Suddenly, tires screeched outside. Black SUVs surrounded the café. Dozens of armed men stepped out. The owner immediately turned pale. The little girl froze. "No," she whispered. The café doors opened. A tall man entered. The entire room became silent. He wore a black suit and looked like someone who carried power wherever he went. But his face showed something else. Fear. The fear of a father who had lost his child. The moment he saw the little girl, his eyes filled with relief. "Alessia." She jumped from her chair and ran into his arms. The man held her tightly as though he never wanted to let go. Then he looked at Lucien. "Did you protect her?" Lucien nodded. Several guards whispered something to the man. The stranger's expression changed. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Lucien shook his head. The man extended his hand. "My name is Matteo Moretti." The name hit him like thunder. Everyone in the city knew that name. Billionaire. Businessman. And according to countless rumors, the most powerful mafia boss in the country. Lucien slowly looked at the little girl. She wasn't just a lost child. She was the daughter of one of the most dangerous men alive. Matteo sat beside him. "You saved my daughter tonight," he said quietly. Lucien didn't know what to say. He had expected police. Not this. Then Matteo asked a strange question. Why didn't you walk away? Lucien thought for a moment. Then he answered honestly. Because she looked lonely. The entire cafe became silent. Even Matteo seemed surprised. For several seconds, the feared Mafia boss simply stared at him. Then he smiled. It was small, but genuine. You may be the first person in years who looked at my daughter and didn't see my name. Alessia suddenly grabbed Lucien's hand. Can he come with us? The guards looked shocked. Matteo looked at his daughter. Then back at Lucien. I think she likes you. Lucien laughed nervously. But deep down, he felt something strange. For the first time in years, someone actually needed him. Matteo stood. You have changed my daughter's life tonight. He reached into his pocket and handed Lucien a black business card. If you ever need anything, call me. Lucien took the card, thinking he would probably never use it. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness had just connected his life forever to the most powerful family in the city. And he had absolutely no idea that the real danger had only just begun. Lucien slipped the black business card into his pocket and watched the long line of luxury vehicles disappear into the night. He thought that would be the end of the strange encounter. He was wrong. 3 days later, he received an eviction notice. He had failed to pay his rent again. The cafe where he worked part-time had also closed, leaving him unemployed. Sitting alone in his tiny apartment, he looked at the black card for a long time. Finally, he called the number. Within an hour, a black car arrived. He was taken to the Moretti estate. The mansion looked like something from another world, marble floors, enormous chandeliers, and gardens larger than the entire neighborhood where he lived. As soon as Lucien entered, a small figure came running down the staircase. Lucien. It was Alessia. She hugged him so tightly that he nearly lost his balance. For the first time in years, someone seemed genuinely happy to see him. Matteo Moretti appeared moments later. You called, he said. Lucien hesitated before explaining his situation. He expected pity. Instead, Matteo nodded calmly. You need a job. Yes. You're studying architecture? Lucien looked surprised. How did you know? I know everything about the man who saved my daughter's life. Matteo offered him a position as an assistant in one of his construction companies until he could finish university. Lucien couldn't believe it. It felt too good to be true. But he accepted. Over the next few months, his life slowly changed. He moved into a small apartment provided by the company, returned to university, and worked harder than ever. And every weekend, he visited the Moretti estate. Mostly because Alessia insisted. She showed him her drawings, her books, and even introduced him to her pet rabbit, Snow. For the first time since losing his parents, Lucien felt like he belonged somewhere. But not everyone was happy about it. One evening, Matteo's chief bodyguard approached him. You should be careful. Why? Mr. Moretti has enemies. And now they know about you. Lucien laughed nervously. I don't belong in this world. The bodyguard's expression remained serious. Unfortunately, you do now. 2 nights later, he understood what the man meant. He was walking home from work when a van suddenly stopped beside him. 3 masked men jumped out. Before he could react, one of them grabbed him. Where is the girl? Lucien's heart stopped. Alessia. They thought he knew something about her. He didn't. But even if he had, he would never have betrayed her. The men beat him and demanded answers. Then headlights appeared. Several black vehicles surrounded the street. Matteo's guards stormed forward. The kidnappers ran. Moments later, Matteo himself stepped out of one of the cars. For the first time, Lucien saw genuine fear in the powerful man's eyes. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," Lucien said. Matteo looked at the blood on his face. "No. You're not." Then he said something unexpected. "You protected my daughter once. Tonight, you were attacked because of us. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Lucien smiled weakly. "You don't owe me anything." Matteo stared at him for several seconds. Then he quietly replied, "You remind me of someone." "Who?" "My younger brother." The older man's voice broke slightly. "He died many years ago." For the first time, Lucien realized something. Behind all the wealth and power, Matteo was simply a father and a man carrying old wounds. From that day on, their relationship changed. Months became years. Lucien graduated at the top of his class and became one of the youngest architects in the company. Under his leadership, schools and community centers were built in poor neighborhoods. He never forgot where he had come from. One afternoon, Matteo invited him to the mansion. Alessia, now a teenager, was waiting in the garden. "You're late," she complained with a smile. Lucien laughed. Matteo watched them quietly. Then he handed Lucien a set of keys. "What are these?" "A new office." Lucien looked confused. "Why?" "Because today, you become the head of your own architectural company." He was speechless. The poor orphan who once couldn't afford dinner now owned his own firm. Tears filled his eyes. "You changed my life." Matteo shook his head. "No." He looked toward Alessia. "You changed ours." Years later, at Alessia's 18th birthday celebration, hundreds of guests filled the estate. When it was time for speeches, she walked onto the stage. She looked at the crowd and then at Lucien. "When I was little," she said, "I was scared and alone in a library. Everyone else ignored me. One person didn't. The room became silent. He gave me a seat beside him when I needed one most." Tears shone in her eyes. "He became my best friend, and my family." The guests applauded. Lucien could barely hold back his emotions. Then Matteo stood and raised his glass. "To kindness," he said. "Because one small act can change an entire destiny." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Shadow Boss Tales so more people can hear stories that remind us to be kind. Special request, comment below, do you believe a single act of kindness can change someone's entire life? As the celebration continued, Lucien looked at the family standing beside him and realized something extraordinary. Years earlier, a frightened little girl had whispered only 5 words. "Can I sit with you?" And with those simple words, she had given a lonely young man something he thought he had lost forever. A family, a purpose, and a place where he finally belonged.